Yeah. Let me know on the space time, and if I don't have anything going on, I'm down. So it's been a really quiet week here in the DAO this week. The only proposal Coder Dan front ran me on was test new VP. We got a looks good 1.3 million, 96.9% for looks good, 41.4K for nah. 3.1%. This ended today at 8:06 a.m. my time. So congratulations on the test new VP proposal reaching quorum or whatever. We did it. In terms of conversations, there's not a ton of forum action. So I saw Ditchy here in the chat. I don't know if there's any update you can give to the DAO or anything along those lines in terms of the legal counsel seeking and DAO box if you've heard anything from them. Oh, yep. Let's bring you up there, buddy. There you go.
GM, everyone.
Jim?
GM.
All right. So I was able to speak with both legal counsel and Dalbox. So kind of blended the bounty. So on the one hand, we were speaking purely legal topics, and on the other hand, we were speaking about governance models, like such as we've discussed previously with Dalbox coming in as a consulting firm to help us with the governance in our foundation. So I have some good news for you, specifically No Future and Choina, and that is legal counsel advised us that the foundation directors are currently under no legal liability for the DAO actions. So you can rest certain that nothing's going to blow back on you for the DAO's decisions. Now, it's kind of a mixed bag of good news, bad news on that front, because what that means is the DAO Foundation is not a legal wrapper for the DAO's activities as we thought it was. And the general breakdown of that, because there are 100 different ways that you can organize your entities for operation. But what DAObox is telling me, I was speaking directly with their legal counsel, co-founders and legal counsel at Aurum, is that you have one entity that acts as a wrapper, one or more entities that act as a wrapper for the DAO's activities. And just like with wallet segregation, you can do operation segregation. So you could pool everything under a single LLC for the operation of DAO, or you can divide it up where one entity does compliance for the DAO, another one does funding for the DAO, and another one does any other activity that you choose. That becomes the legal wrapper for the DAO. And what that means is that any actions that we as voters take, we would have limited liability wrapped around us because the LLC or other entity would then put the target on its back for our group activities. The foundation, on the other hand, is a special purpose vehicle. And what that means is it is designed and implemented for one specific purpose. Think of it kind of like you would a nonprofit treasury that is designed for funding grants to universities or charity contributions. So that would be something like the LLC runs the operations of the DAO for our investing, for our revenue generation, so on and so forth, and then funnels a certain amount of money over to a treasury dedicated to the foundation's operations. And we give the foundation a charter that says this is what we want you to do with the money. And that could be any activity on chain or off. So that's their general recommendation on how we do our legal structuring. As far as how we do our governance, there are a number of different models that we can go with. I could bore you all for the next hour or two with all the different options, but um, what DAObox recommended is to take a look at a couple of governance models that are emerging in the Web3 space right now as the evolution of the DAO structure. We're currently in generation 3 of DAO governance, and we're seeing this across the board with a lot of OP projects that are still in the space. Um, recently, I think just a few weeks ago, there was an announcement that the DAO over at Bored Apes Yacht Club had decided that they were going to hybridize away from their purely decentralized model and have an LLC dedicated, a centralized LLC dedicated to their game design, while the DAO would be taking governance issues around that through a wrapper. They sent me a link. I'll go ahead and post it up right now. This is a document written up by Sergey and Pavel. This is the legal counsel for DAObox and co-founders of DAObox, and they work over at Aurum, which is the legal backer to their project. So they wanted me to take a look, wanted all of us to take a look at this document. And yes, this is a legal essay, so it's going to take a little time to dig into it. But the abstract behind it is that with the evolution of DAOs and the purely decentralized nature of them causing some of the problems that we have been discussing in the DAO forums, namely slow operating, purely transparent operations where we can't get where we can't have any internal information to protect our strategies, and liability issues. The evolution is moving towards a hybridized model. The specific model in question is called optimism governance, and I'll put a link to that framework up here in the chat as well. And yes, this comes from the Optimism L2 chain. They designed this one. So the Optimism model, you have a bicameral government very similar to a parliament. Um, it's like the House of Lords and the House of Commons in the British parlance. The House of Lords would be the token holders and the asset holders that have relative voting power relative to their holdings, who are the primary they are the primary policy makers for the DAO, and then the House of Commons is excuse me, is every token holder gets represented one human, one vote, and their primary goal is to pass or veto bills coming out of the House of Lords. Here we go, and their phrasing is the token house and the citizens house. And so this is part of the concept of the DAO 3 harmony model that is in the first document we posted up here. So it's a lot on the table. We'll definitely have to take it into the DAO forums to discuss what the ramifications are for our project. But there is one little nugget I have to drop at the end of this, and that is that now that we know that the foundation company is not the legal wrapper for the DAO, what it means is there is currently no legal wrapper for the DAO. And that puts us back in the position where the token holders and voters are individually exposed for liability for the project. So um, I actually walk away from this in a pretty optimistic frame of mind because our operations as a DAO have been strictly on chain. We have not opened bank accounts. We do no transaction in fiat, and we have no exposure to the outside legal system through those traditional structures. We don't currently have exposure for legal or tax actions for the DAO. But on the flip side, we need to have a serious conversation about how we're going to structure a legal wrapper and get that moving as our primary goal, rather than worrying too much about the restructuring of the foundation. All right, so that's my piece. Happy to take any questions on that.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Coder.
I guess, I mean, the foundation was kind of meant to be a legal wrapper for the DAO in a way, maybe. Can you kind of clarify more how they got to that position?
Okay,
of
sure thing.
that?
It's because the specific entity of a foundation company in the Cayman Islands is designed in such a way that it cannot have members or beneficiaries.
Mm.
So what that would mean in purely English terms is we thought that the members of the DAO, the token holders and the asset holders, were the members of the foundation and wrapped by the legal entity for liability protections. But it cannot have members. So the structure of the foundation is you have somebody making executive decisions on what the foundation is going to do based on its charter from its owners. The DAO is the owner of the foundation. And in our current structure, the directors of the foundation have full autonomy over what the DAO is going to do, or the foundation is going to do. But because we hold the purse strings of the treasury, they don't have the funding to work autonomously. So that's kind of our checks and balance system there. Um, However, in the typical foundation structure, your directors have full autonomy for the operations of the foundation. The owners, aka the DAO, write the charter and the mission for what we want them to do with whatever treasury we give them. And then we as a DAO have the power to vote them out and replace them if they don't follow the directions that we gave them, but no other power to make executive decisions on what that foundation does. Now, in a legal entity such as a DUNA or an LLC, what that allows us to do is wrap all of the token holders and VP holders in a legal wrapper, and then we can run the operations of the LLC. And then the LLC
Hmm.
can be the owner of the foundation, and that way we have a direct one-to-one channel of communication between the two entities.
LLC in this case would be a new company set up. That is that the Duna?
Duna is one of the models that we could use. It's
Yeah.
decentralized. It's an LLC specifically for DAOs.
Yeah, it's kind of the new. It's not really super. I mean, it's fairly new. It's like been around for a year or so. I saw some project was talking about moving to a Duna.
Mhm. Well, there are a number of different jurisdictions that have been introducing legal frameworks for DAO representation, and it is an evolving process right now. Here in the United States, Wyoming is at the forefront of this. Uh,
Yeah.
but I've looked into their legal structures, and honestly, there's nothing that a DAO LLC out of Wyoming gives you as a benefit above and beyond a standard Wyoming LLC. But there are a couple of other jurisdictions in the U.S. Namely, there is a North Carolina indigenous tribe that has established a DAO-friendly LLC on their tribal lands. Of course,
Nice.
it's the same. It's going to be the same headache we have working multinational anyway, because everything we do is going to have to be at a federal level rather than a state level.
So do you have any like what's the TLDR for the DAO next steps? I mean, you're saying right now, yeah, I'm kind of with Join now.
So from
Uh,
what it sounds like, we have to get a LLC to put as a second entity that can be we can then like if this was tax accounting, we'd be checking the box, so it'd be a subsidiary or in the ownership of the LLC, the foundation. So does that mean we can continue the foundation but switch it over to DAO box and then have to create a LLC?
Uh, Very close to that, yes. So I'll separate those out as two different issues. Bringing DAObox into the foundation is going to serve the purpose of having the executive team of the foundation be an outside consultant so that we don't have to operate it. And in that structure, we would most likely, I would recommend we go with a structure where DAObox is the named directors for the foundation. They're given a budget in advance and the directions to simply maintain the compliance of the foundation. And then one of us in the DAO, we can campaign and get voted in as the supervisor of the foundation. and then we are the checks and balances for their executive plays. So if we don't like something that they do, the supervisor has the authority to fire them from those director positions. Now, as it stands right now, our foundation doesn't do anything. It's meant to be a funding mechanism for outside activities. Enabling on-chain collaboration with minimal liability for individual members. Yeah. So Zybot, the point of the DAO is to get rid of all this old verse things. That is correct. However, to protect us from the old verse legal systems, we need to have some of their legal entities wrapping around our activities as a kind of a firewall between the old verse and the new verse. Zbot. Okay. Sorry about the pronunciation.
Some people, I've heard people say Zybot. I've also say Zbot myself, so I don't know what's the right answer. Zbot should answer that, but or Zybot, Shebot.
Actually, it's Shebot. I'm just gonna go with dude. Call everyone dude.
So I guess like this sounds like the necessity of switching over to something like DAO Box, because what you're saying is in our current setup, there is no legal liability. Which personally, I want to hear that from the lawyer themselves. But that's just me personally trying to. I don't know how you feel about that, but in terms of if the foundation continues not to do anything in the terms of the DAO activating the treasury, we have literally no snapshot activity except for testing voting power. There doesn't seem to be any funding requests that are on a large scale coming up anytime soon that I see. Maybe potentially there are, but are it seems like we've moved more towards reward structure with what's left of the treasury and then holding our treasury and then eventually selling it and then planning to do something with that. So for me, I don't know if we need the extra bells and whistles if we are getting the legal protection from the foundation. If we assume that we continue not doing like being an investment club or trying to be a hedge fund. Now, I know there are aspirations of some members of this DAO to like be more proactive in gaining yield with our treasury via staking or some other slightly more active management, which I think then the legal wrapper makes sense for. But I guess the question is to the DAO, is that something that we are seeking to do? And this is something we've talked about through forums and all that. But does that make sense? Am I like hitting this right, or is the foundation just in trouble no matter what we do?
Oh, the foundation isn't in trouble at all because it isn't functioning. It isn't functioning in the real world. It has no exposure.
So if
Um,
we stayed within that framework, we could just stay doing what we're doing, right?
Give me a second to parse the question. Okay, the foundation can continue doing what it's doing, but as of right now, if it doesn't have a mission that it's serving and it doesn't have a treasury to serve that mission with, then it's just an overhead cost that we don't need. Um, the DAO itself, meaning all the individual members of the DAO, do not have a legal wrapper, and would and it's recommended that we have a legal wrapper around those activities because as voters we are making the executive decisions of that treasury, and that's where the risk factor comes in.
Okay. So I understand. I'm just wondering how relevant that risk is based on our current activities. Like if we decide to do certain things that broach into the real world, it makes perfect sense. I'm like, and then I guess it would be good to know like a cost breakdown for this extra legal entity because I'm assuming that the extra legal entity is gonna have need some kind of governance for itself, correct? Or is Dalbox just handling the entirety of setting up the LLC, being the directors on the foundation while we have one supervisor elected by the DAO kind of as for oversight to make sure that there's nothing funky going on? Does the LLC require that kind of oversight or involvement from a DAO member? And just overall, I guess, fees for this structure to be built out on an annual basis?
Okay, good
That's a
questions.
lot.
So
I'm
number
sorry.
one, LLC setup and compliance is significantly cheaper than a foundation company. Significantly cheaper. It's going to cost you, depending, it can cost you between $500 and $1,000 for the setup, DUNS numbers, all of the background setup. And your annual compliance is only going to be a few $100s plus accounting fees for tax filings.
Okay, not bad. I got to set up an LLC. It sounds like. But all right, so Box would handle all of that in terms of handling the accounting, the compliance, and then because with the LLC, I haven't done this in a while, but for LLC, there is still like named persons that should be on the documents, correct? Is it going to be just Box?
Yes, there are, but in the United States jurisdictions, I've got like 3 or 4 LLCs right now. So in the U.S. jurisdictions, the way the LLC works is you name your founders and your executive decision makers on the documents, but that information is known only to the Secretary of State in the state that you file, and now to FinCEN over at the Treasury because of the beneficial owners information reporting. So U.S. Treasury will know, the Secretary of State in the filing state will know, but then you can slap a registered agent on the front of it, and nobody doing a public search on your LLC will ever know who's inside of it.
Okay, that's good to know. So I'm just going to go back and read a few of the comments because I want to make sure we're not missing any actual purposeful conversation other than Zbot's uh, pronunciation. Sounds like we need to pivot away from a foundation. And how do the monkey signers fit into all of this? I think it sounds like the Treasury, the DAO still manages the Treasury. We still have our multi sig, we still operate the same ways, but the legal wrappers around us just become a little bit more refined and protective versus what they currently are. So yeah, a new mode of on-chain coordination, collab, and consensus out of the trad org. We way immutable, decentralized, transparent, borderless, open for everyone. Yes, it's a decentralized future that we seek for. I personally like this one, Faye, saying to demote to single cell organism with a ledger. That seems like the most centralized but decentralized way that we can approach this. Yeah, I mean, if I guess we need Box to give us more general information about the cost of this on an annual basis, and then what kind of budget we would need to give to make that work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, where we left the conversation off is I told them that since I'm not the sole decision maker for this for this hiring, I have to take it back to the DAO. We need to do our discussion phase, then our voting phase. So it may be a multi-month process before we make a decision on hiring them. But for number one, they said we understand how DAOs operate, and number two is rather than doing a piecemeal solution, the discussion should be centered around a holistic restructuring of the DAO's legal system so that we come out of this with one proposal, a proposal of how we want to structure, what roles we want DAO Box to fulfill for us, and how we want to put our governing bodies, our councils, our oversight committees, our task forces in place so that we have both our checks and balances in place, but we also have a little more streamlined process for the daily operations of the DAO. Meaning that there would be a commission of some kind that can speed run decisions of a minor impact, and then the DAO gets involved in full scale voting when it comes to major decision making, like adding or subtracting directors, funding proposals, restructuring the company, and so forth.
Okay, so then I think with especially that part of it, what Coder Dan mentioned in the chat about the one issue going to a pure DAO structure is that we're using an off-chain execution with Snapshot. The CEO of Aragon is going to come on and have a chat about how we could move fully on chain on October 4th. Coder Dan, does that affect this conversation at all?
I think if we're saying, like some people are saying, well, let's just get rid of the foundation and move to a fully on-chain DAO, the biggest obstacle to that right now is just that we do have this off-chain execution, and so because of that, there are people that are doing that execution, which is kind of why we set up the foundation in the first place, to have that separation of from like Pixelcraft, who created the project, to the actual DAO that's running, the project. So I think it's on the roadmap anyway, that we need to move to a fully on-chain DAO, at least for moving things like money around. So yeah, I just wanted to interject that is something that is, now that we're finally settled on base, something we could start considering as a DAO. Like, how do we actually move forward in our DAO roadmap?
Hey, Coder Dan, what types of transactions are being executed off chain right now?
When I say off chain, I guess I mean like it requires a manual execution. I mean, and the answer is everything right now. Every new feature, every contract upgrade, every payment. It's not, when I say like pure on chain, I think I'm thinking more of like Aave, where when you create a proposal on Aave, you have to specify the call data for that prop. And if you, whenever the DAO votes on a prop, it just all it does is it executes that call data on chain. So there's really no middleman having to execute anything. It's just purely done with code. Now I'm sure there are areas that it's harder to do that like fully on chain, and that but like, from what I can tell, I mean, Aave has done a pretty good job of keeping the scope tight on what they do on chain, and like that's what the DAO is about. The DAO just doesn't do stuff that's outside of their scope to execute on chain. If that makes sense.
Okay.
So like, we could just focus only on payments, and if it says, someone makes a prop to the DAO that says, I want to make a game, or I want to do something, and I want you to pay me 10,000 ghost. Right now, someone has to, or like the multi-sig executors have to actually manually create that transaction um, on the Gnosis safe or Den, and then they have to all approve it. So we have two steps of execution. Ideally, we would only have one step, which is someone makes the prop gets voted on, and the prop is executed automatically when it meets the threshold.
Okay. And in our current legal structure, when that payment gets made to the bounty or the contractor or whoever the money goes out to, when that transaction happens, it is not the DAO paying that bounty to the bounty hunter. It is 10,000 individual members who voted on the proposal making that payment to the bounty hunter. That's the difference of a legal wrapper.
I agree with that. Like, there's probably value in having a legal wrapper, especially if it's a kind of an if we had an adversarial administration. Luckily, we don't have an adversarial administration. I mean, that could change. So it's always good to set things up in a long-term way. Um, but there are DAOs operating out there right now that like don't have a legal wrapper, but they do have on-chain execution. I think for us though, I agree that we should continue having a legal wrapper for the DAO. I'm just saying we also need to work on the actual DAO roadmap, which is putting more of our execution fully on chain.
Yeah. So in the grand scheme of things, I think what we're looking at here is there is a legal evolution towards decentralized on-chain operations, but it's not there and it's not ready yet. And so until it's there, we need to have some kind of legal liability wrapper to our operations. Um, Now, the purpose of having an operating entity plus a foundation is this. The operating entity is going to be in some jurisdiction, right? Be it Germany, Dubai, US, wherever it is, that LLC is going to fall under that jurisdiction's law. And even though our funds are all in blockchain, If that government decides it wants to freeze the assets of the LLC, they can go through the legal process to try and freeze our treasury. The foundation in the Cayman Islands allows us to move ownership of that treasury into a tax advantage jurisdiction where it cannot be frozen by a single entity like the US Gov. So there is still a benefit to having the foundation in our
Hmm.
mix, and it's for treasury protection from
Yeah,
outside
I
attacks.
agree. Like anytime if we were to deal, if someone were to execute a transaction that sent money to a sanctioned country or something, that's been like Jesse and I's biggest worry is that someone in the DAO does execute a transaction to like a Iran or someone, and then the whole DAO kind of gets blacklisted. It's a
Mhm.
definitely something to worry about, and having a wrapper would help with any liability for like people that were involved in executing that.
I think it's having both in play is going to be very beneficial if we structure them for their proper usage. And that would be one, the foundation company in the Cayman Islands owns the treasury and controls the treasury. Number two, that foundation then funds the LLC that handles the operations of the DAO. And that would include compliance, tax reporting, fiat operations if we need them, plus any funding to game studios for the continuation of our mission. Number three, to answer the previous question about where the ledger monkeys reside, if the treasury is owned by the foundation, then the ledger monkeys operate in the foundation. So the treasurer of the foundation would make the final call. Yep, vote is good. It's snapshotted. We've got things the way we want to. I'm going to go ahead and authorize the transaction. Ledger monkeys, ledger monkeys take that final audit and say, "Yep, it's good. We're going to go ahead and pull the trigger on it." And then the foundation is the legal entity that moves that money to wherever it needs to go.
Sorry, just reading the
Okay.
comments here. Props on chain, votes on chain, founding on chain, payments on chain, building on chain, launching on chain, use the build on chain, all on chain, everything. Ha ha ha. That's a Zybot, Zbot, Shebot, whatever you want to call them. But yeah, we need to be protected in every point. So all the legal things are necessary. Avoid loopholes to keep DAO Treasury safe. Coder Dan, I see that you have to sign off by. Keep all the DAO members protected and safe. Is there an option? Because it sounds like this isn't that much of a radical change. The one thing that you did mention, though, like continuing the foundation with the ledger monkeys under that and having a legal wrapper via LLC makes sense. Maybe not in the US, maybe we could do a different jurisdiction. But what you're advocating for here is a concept that's been talked about quite a few times before, and it's failed every other time. And it's the idea of a level of centralization for the like smaller activities of the DAO, like basically a group, a centralized group having control of some kind of annual budget that they can dole out smaller sums. We've done this with the ATF. I think we did that was the arcade task force. We had the DTF. We tried having a couple of I forgot the acronyms for them, but like basically the with Roxiano and Hepe had started that kind of effort at the beginning, a centralized like executive team essentially for the DAO. DTF definitely joined. There's a lot of acronyms. It sounds like you're advocating for that. Is that the case here? Because that is a big shakeup. And then, like, how much of a budget are we talking about giving this kind of entity to execute and, like, basically provide grants, if we're gonna, call it that, like smaller grants and payments for activity?
Whew, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
All right. So, the very first question, am I advocating for centralization? No, not exactly. I'm advocating for hybridization. And for those who haven't been active in the DAO forums to read my essays on these topics, I'll give you the TLDR. A fully decentralized democratic approach to running the executive functions of a business is a recipe for failure. And some of the major issues in doing that are every process that we try and implement is going to be multiple months in discussion and voting before we can execute on it. The drawback to that is if we're trying to capitalize on an opportunity that is time sensitive, we will miss it every time. The other issue is threat vectors. Um, with a multi-month discussion and voting process for every execution, if what we're doing is a market transaction, like buying or selling ETH at a predetermined ladder price, we're signaling to the market months in advance what we're going to do and how much money we're going to move. And anybody who's in these channels just listening in can go to the market and put up a short or put up a long, counter our position and be able to front run our transactions and take any profit that we would have wanted to pass on to our members. So those are the number one and the number two major issues that need to be solved through something other than a pure democratic vote. Now, the way I suggest balancing it is having the most stringent checks and balances that we can. So it would go beyond, hey, let's fund the wearables task force. Here's their mission. And if they don't fulfill their mission, we're not going to fund them again. It could be more that they are strictly working in one category, like one task force for wearables, one task force for maintaining lore when we write new storyline, one task force for accounting oversight,
Yeah, but see,
and
now our
then
overhead explodes because you have to pay all these people. No one's going to do it for free. Even if you pay them cheaply, we're adding a ton of overhead.
you're absolutely right. And that's why part of the foundation governance is meant to include compensation back to our contributors. And that can be done in a foundation or an LLC. The structure is different, um, but the way to envision it is like don't give money directly to the contributors as like a dividend structure. It has to be strictly for contributions made. But you're right. It does introduce more overhead. It does introduce more complexity, and it does introduce more cost for the operations of the entity. But the flip side of that coin is that now we have an incentive structure to get more of our people involved in the governance of our DAO. So I mean, right now there are maybe 10 of us in those DAO chats going back and forth over topics, and none of us are getting paid for any of those conversations or contributions.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the chart
Oh,
that Joanna
cool.
dropped. This is a lot. But yeah, there is a flow, and I think it's a spectrum centralization. So like for me, the first thing I thought about was at points in time I wish the DAO was a little bit more nimble because there are DeFi opportunities that are relatively safe that are incentivized, and we could have like made bank. Like we could have as a DAO, and I'm not advocating for this even though I did it myself, so I sort of am. We could have jumped in on Katana when it was launching and got a crazy amount of the cat tokens with our large treasury from just depositing. We could have withdrawn already and still have all these rewards that are going to be airdropped to us in the future. We could be staking for future airdrops, or just engaging in slight DeFi that's a little bit more needs a little bit more active management, but not a ton of active management. So I would not be against like having a group of people within the DAO. Maybe this is part of the LLC structure where those people who are going to be handling these kind of things have like a certain level of oversight with the budget. I don't know what that looks like. Is it 4 or 5 people, whatever it is, and then having regular elections if we're going to have like a more hybrid form of governance where these people will kind of, if we have people coming to the DAO, it's sort of what has been proposed before 100 times. I've never been opposed to that, as long as it's not like, you're getting paid $200,000 to dole out $100,000. That doesn't make sense. We got to be realistic here in terms of how to operate such things. But I guess it depends on our treasury and how productive our treasury is. Because right now it seems relatively unproductive, other than like number go up, which is great and we all root for.
Well, this is a perfect case study for the what we're discussing here is an investment team for a DeFi investment task force. Um, so right at the beginning, I'd want to see some kind of skills assessment or some kind of justification for the skills of the people that are vying for those positions. I don't know how we tie that to a soulbound NFT or maintain full anonymity of those members. Perhaps it's something where people that want to take executive leadership in the DAO have to KYC to the foundation, and then the foundation would hold those records, tight to the chest, so that we could certify the skill set of the people that want to step into those roles. But once people are in that role, a DeFi investment task force is, again, it's a great example because the way we could balance the powers there is they have the authority to make investment decisions with a preset a preset budget, let's say, but the DAO has previously established what their risk tolerance is for investment. So if the DAO says we have budget A, budget B, budget C. Budget A is a tiny little amount of money where you're allowed to go full ape, go full degen on your investment opportunities. But B and C are our bigger buckets, and we want to make sure that those go into more conservative plays that have long-term returns on them. And you can align the incentives of your executive team. So rather than paying them a monthly, you pay them based on performance. Maybe get a monthly for doing the activities, a small base amount, but then if their investment plays pay out, then they're compensated through a percentage of that gain.
So, real quickly, because I do see we have Augie in the audience. I was just thinking about this because these are all grandiose plans, and I think I like a lot of this. But the question is, will this garner support? Because all of this ultimately has to go up for a vote eventually. So, I wish we had people like Immaterial, Phantasma, people with significant voting power that can kind of move the needle a little bit to give us some feedback here. Because I love you all, but we're all like relatively smaller holders. Not all of us, but like I know I am.
Mhm.
So it's not
I
like
am too.
I can't move a decision. So it'd be interesting to know what they think because ultimately, like those bigger players tend to have more say in a sense. And I do think that, in their eyes, they see this more as the rewards distribution. That's what the DAO's for. I don't really think we're going to be funding games for a while unless we get a massive treasury explosion. Ghost runs to like $5. Somehow the
Mhm.
DAO says let's sell off a little bit and we sell some ETH and now we're sitting on a bunch of USDC and then we can be we can start doing things. At the current moment, I feel like the DAO is just structured towards, um, you know, doling out rarity farming, and then we'll figure out what to do with the rest of the money when we get there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But prior to us doing things, we want to make sure our governance structure is set up to do said things. And you're right. As of right now, the only thing we're set up to do is rarity farming. So the short answer to the big question is it's going to be a long conversation amongst anybody who wants to be involved in those conversations in the DAO discussion. We'll do weekly spillovers into this chat to give everybody a TLDR and bring them up to speed if they don't have time to be involved in those discussions. And when we come to a conclusion of how we want this governance structured, I would recommend we do a full systematic design. And what that means is the only thing the DAO has for its operational guidelines right now is a mission statement. We stalled out after that. We don't have a vision statement. We don't have operating agreements or bylaws. We have a boilerplate template for the constitution of our foundation, but the foundation doesn't do anything. So we need to come together and come up with a solution that we can all agree on. Um, Loosely framed for the widest acceptance, and everybody has their individual input saying this is the one key thing that I want to see within the framework. And then as a collective block, all of us go out into the DAO and say this is what the governing active governing group suggests we need to do, and we lobby it as a power block. Yeah,
Yeah.
governance
So
is fun, isn't it?
yeah, this makes sure that even though we have nothing to vote on currently, we'll have plenty of conversations for the next several weeks, maybe months, as we dole out and figure out this stuff. So I would ask you, Ditchy, what are the next actionable steps that we can take going from here, leading to next week's meeting? We will have Aragon in 2 weeks coming on and kind of discussing some governance stuff, which we, might be very insightful for us. What's the next steps? So are we talking like creating a forum discussion so that people, I think in my mind, I see it being like kind of laying this structure out, or maybe getting some documentation from Dowbox, why, like the sales pitch of this entity organization where it's going to be LLC. They'll create a new foundation, and then what the things that we need to do and agree on. Then we need to figure out what we do with Lotusha. We can just end our contract, but we still have liabilities there in terms of taxes potentially, or fines
Mhm.
for not filing. Uh, I believe we've already voted on that, and that's already paid for, right? I mean, I don't think we've set aside money
Yes.
for it though.
Yes, the AGIP was $16,952 to reimburse the money Pixelcraft lent us to keep the foundation from being struck off. Then an additional $10,000 budget to the foundation directors to cover the necessary expenses. That was roughly $4,000 was already earmarked for those liabilities that you're discussing, with an additional $6,000 of discretionary funding for any miscellaneous that pops up. That's already been approved in a core prop. It's just a matter of the
Paying it.
treasurer distributing those funds to where you need them.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So
So
we,
I don't imagine fines will be more than 10K, so we should be fine. So yeah, we don't really need anything for that once the DAO decides. So yeah, forum post with more information, and then we'll try to activate some of the bigger holders to like chime in on the conversation to see if it's something, because it has been a contentious subject. I do think it's necessary. It could be helpful, but it's all about the implementation and the degree of implementation, because you don't want to over centralize, but we can't just be like a random group of 50 people that, we never move in any set direction that benefits us. So hopefully the market makes it easy by just pumping to the moon, and then we can be all happy and have like a $200 million treasury and then figure things out. But I don't want to wait on that either.
oh
It's
my
probably a bad
goodness.
idea to do.
Yeah, 1,000%. We would rather have these kind of structures in place before we all get rich and then have to argue over $100 million with the treasury. Uh, but here's the good news. Um, because Dowbox is founded by a legal team, I already discussed this with them on the consult. They would be more than happy to collaborate with us on in the discussion on how we're going to build this structure. Give us the legal feedback, help us draft the documents, and then we can have our retained lawyer come into the conversation and help us lobby the rest of the DAO, saying this is the legal advice, why we need to do it straight from our lawyer's mouth. And the good news is we've already approved a $10,000 retainer for that legal counsel. I suggest we start using it for this restructuring conversation. We can retain Dowbox as legal representatives to help us build this prior to ever bringing them in as executive control of the foundation. Two separate contracts we're looking at.
Okay, although that could create a conflict of interest because they are going to be consulting us on how to use their platform. So it'd probably be smart to have an outside party still as the legal uh, representative. The other thing I was going to say, fuck, I think I just forgot it. What was it? Damn it. Oh, what's the price tag to get this all set up? If we had to, like, you're going to the DAO right now, you need to pitch it, like, for the entire setup for the first year, including all the fees for setup, and then the actual like year on over year cost. What are we looking at?
Well, an LLC setup is under $1,000 in the US.
No, but I
If you
mean
do it yourself,
Dowbox is going to charge us some fee for providing the service. What is the like? What's the amount that is going to be presented to the DAO to start out to get this all rolled out? Like if we are, it's all approved. We got the yes. What is the check that we have to write?
we don't know until we give them a scope of work. because it's an a la carte menu and they can supply a lot of services to us, but until they know what services we want them to perform, they can't give us an invoice on it.
Okay, so I think, I mean, and anybody, if you can chime in, please, because it's just me and him speaking. So I think the DAO should have a separate legal counsel, and that separate legal counsel that is on retainer, we can bring them into one of these meetings and have DAO Box advise us and give us like a budget based on what we're, planning on doing with them for governance, like so that we can know, so that the legal counsel can give us legal counsel right then and there if like what is being suggested makes sense. And then if it does, then we're good to go. We can also then start using Dowbox legal counsel after that. But just like in that initial, you know, meeting, just to keep a conflict of interest potentially like avoided. We do that. We get a good number, and then we can go to forum posts that kind of fully explain everything. Does that make sense?
It does, but I would add one caveat to that, and that is if we're going to retain legal counsel and bring them in on this design process, we need to have the first thing we should do is have a committee designed for liaison with that legal counsel. This sounds weird, but hear me out. We bring a legal counsel into this conversation right now, and we have a 2 hour discussion. There's $6,000 or $600 down the drain right there, minimum. Charging $300 to $600 an hour for this kind of legal. So we don't want to be in a position where every member of the DAO can call up our lawyer and ask questions and just start, ticking down those ticking away those funds. That needs to be a little bit more centralized, so that the discussion can collate into what the actual questions are and then be delivered on a silver platter.
Okay, yeah, I think we could do that via forum post where we can organize over the course of a couple weeks or maybe a month all the questions that we're going to present to Dalbox. It doesn't have to be next week; it could be in a few weeks, especially since Aragon's coming on in 2 weeks. We organize, DAO forum, open discussion, lots of questions. Get all the questions in there. Organize this. Have a facilitator host with a set of questions that we're going to ask, so that we can make sure that. The time is well spent because we also ultimately we the legal is going to be here for maybe an hour, 45 minutes, 30 minutes if we structure this just right. So that should be good. We pay them the full hour. You don't want to be a jerk. But the we can get them in, organize it, ask our questions. Dowbox can then we can then make some decisions because the important thing is we have to make sure that we get feedback from the whales, I think, almost first, because if they are completely against this, then we're just burning legal funds by bringing a lawyer in, and they're not going to vote for it. Then what's the point? Like, we there has to we have to treat this almost more like politics in a weird way, and I hate it, but it's like the lobbying of voting power. Like, if I have an idea and I know I have absolutely no voting power, I should go and look and try to see what people think within the DAO that do have voting power. And if I can create a coalition, then I can move things a lot more effectively. But by not having the biggest whales here, it makes it really hard to get like everybody's feedback is important, but theirs, it's not that theirs is more important, it's that their vote can change votes. Like it's actually like not more. I don't want to say more important, but you get me. It's a voting power thing.
Yeah,
So knowing what
carries a
they
little
think
more weight.
is very helpful.
Well, I would say that this bounty that I just finished for legal counsel is a perfect case study for how we can go about this. Because what we did is we had the big discussions, and then I collated all of the major questions and talking points into a bullet list and was able to knock out every question that the DAO had within a 1 hour window. Um, and it was fairly seamless process, to be truthful. So
So yeah,
I
I
would
think that
recommend
was
we
great.
take that and move forward with it.
The only suggestion I would have, because that process sounds like it worked perfectly, it should happen in front of all of us so that we can A, record it, we have a recording of it, and B, then be able to, if listen in and see if we have any additional questions. The additional questions don't have to happen during the meeting, but we can always follow up with more focused, directed questions through that committee or you if you're doing the bounty as we continue on. Because we don't have the full reference. We just kind of have like a relayed version of telephone coming from you, which is not bad. You're
Absolutely.
dependable, but it's just better to do it like fully transparently in front of the DAO, if possible.
if possible, yeah. The structure that I would ideally recommend is that we have a designated legal liaison. That role would probably be best to put that assign that to the supervisor of the foundation because it's going to be a voted on um, DAO member. So, meaning that when we need to seek legal counsel, only one person is authorized to schedule that appointment and tap the budget for it. But anytime they sit with legal counsel, they're required to have a minimum of, I don't know, one ledger monkey plus one member of the DAO or additional ears sitting in on that call, so that's not just a single point of reference that can gatekeep all the information.
Just record it, record the audio, because I do that with like whenever we meet with Lotusha, like if it's a call with me and Thrax, I record the call, drop it Ledger Monkeys. I think I dropped into DAO discussion too. And it's like this is what exactly they said. These are the questions I asked. So if did I miss anything? Like I think this gives us all the clarity, and then I don't have to answer any other questions because there's just go to the recording, leave me alone.
Well, that works in some cases. That'll work for anything that we can publicly discuss with the entire world. But anytime we're talking about something that is a very sensitive activities for the DAO, as soon as we broadcast that, we've just lost our client attorney privilege because we're publicly broadcasting all of our legal counsel. So I think there are some categories of discussions that shouldn't be shared in a larger group, but that's going to have to go into a discussion about are we going to put together a council for those legal for that legal interaction specifically.
Yeah, I think bounty works better here. Like picking someone or opening up the bounty because it seems like it's not going to be at our current state. We're not super active, so it shouldn't be that big a deal. But yeah, no, definitely, there's going to be certain conversations that should not be recorded. But the structure and the building of our governance, I think, is fine because we're just basically going through legal framework of like what works, what is like seems to be the structure that doesn't get you bonked by the US government or anybody else and
Mhm.
keeps you legally compliant globally. That's that shit should be recorded and put on a YouTube so people can watch it and somebody earn some creator revenue.
Hmm. Are you suggesting that legal counsel that the DAO pays for can then be monetized to make revenue for the DAO?
No, I've been playing trading too many live streaming coins on Pump Fun. I've been having too much fun this week.
You degen. All right. But looping back to much earlier in the conversation, I would be gung ho to have some people in our DAO that are keeping tabs on new airdrop opportunities, new investment opportunities, and bringing that back to the DAO, not just for the DAO's involvement, but also, hey DAO, let's have a discussion about whether we want to throw some money at this. And if you're on that meeting, you as an individual now have the insight about new drops without having to go out and research everything on your own.
Yeah, see, things like that wouldn't be discussed. I think it's just more like I guess we'll just have to discuss this more in depth. But yeah, I feel like we've reached a good point here in this conversation. I'm looking at the chat. Yeah, legal counsel might not even give us the legal advice in public, so that makes sense. Flame asking, I'm curious what other DAO studios companies are doing compared to us. How many people they have in the audience when they have a meeting? Yeah, it's like Aave DAO. Do they have weekly calls?
Every one
I
of
think
them
they're
is
different because
structured
we're
in
a
a
gaming
different way.
DAO. Yeah, so
Every one of them is different. We have a general weekly call, but if whether we're doing ongoing councils or single action bounties with a council, it would make sense to have the individual councils meeting on a regular basis to discuss their activities, and that would be more frequently than weekly meetings if we're dividing and conquering like that.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, Azuki Hangout was over 100. So yeah, it depends on the community, I guess, and the level of because decentralization and DAOs are spectrums. We can be all the way on Aave where everything's on chain executed, or we can be like, there are many DAOs that are three people and two people vote and that's it. Like just little wrappers. I'm gonna set up a DAO with my son actually, like a little multi sig. I don't want to call it a DAO. It's just gonna be a multi sig, but something fun that I
Mhm.
can put his Roblox money into and force him to have to actually do something on chain to get it.
Ah, gotcha. You do know you in the U.S. you can pay your son as an employee of your company
I don't have
and
a
call it
company
your.
currently. I should. I'm looking into it uh, as we're speaking, but I've just been kind of raw dogging life. So you know, making sure keeping taxes in order and all that. But like, I should as I grow as a content creator, it might make more sense to do something like that. But I don't know.
Yeah, I'll send you a
Add an
link to my
offspring. I
legal.
like that now.
I'll send you a link over to my lawyer who's got the whole thing covered. Is basically you got an LLC, you set it up, you name your kids as employees of the LLC. Of course, they can only work a certain number of hours because of child labor law, but what you're doing is making them earn their allowance for doing minimal tasks around the company, shredding papers, filing documents, administrative nonsense.
Get me coffee.
Exactly. And then you can write that off on your taxes.
All right, I'm gonna have to hire my son. He's a remote worker. We're gonna have to do it. His health insurance is going on there. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so yeah, friends, this has been a great meeting. Unless there's any other business, because we didn't really talk about much other than just governance, we could wrap it up here. It's been a good talk so far, a lot of information. Anything in the chat? I see Supreme Pablo is typing and Flame.
Let me know how it
No
goes.
futuristic.
I've
Let
been
me know how
having
it goes. I've been having monthly meetings with my daughters on how to invest their allowance. They are invested in Pengu. See, what I did was I gave my son a wallet. I sent money. A few friends sent him money, and he's like, "Oh man, it went up." And I'm like, "Yeah." So he's a gamer. So I send him. There's like $100,000 tournament, ZK Verify, and it's a Space Invader tournament. They have really restrictive bot stuff, which is catching humans, like from just who are trying to play multiple rounds. But 100K up for for grabs. So I'm like, bro, play Space Invaders. I know you want to play your stupid Roblox, but you can make a couple $100 and you're good at gaming, so maybe more, and then you don't have to fucking bother me like for some Roblox. I'm giving you the Roblox. You got to earn them.
Hey, send us the link to that. I cut my teeth on Space Invaders.
Yeah, let me. I'll find it real quickly before we hop off. There's a lot of like I'm like perpetually looking for opportunities that are next to free content based or uh gaming based. Let me see. I have it in one of these conversations. EK Verify. It's their Space Invader game, and it's okay. ZKV Protocol. There we go. Found it. This. So transparently, I don't know anything about this protocol at all. I just saw somebody showed me this play to earn campaign. The game doesn't look bad. It's just Space Invaders. It's a clone. It does act weird though when you like you'll play a game, you try to register. The last time I played, I was able to register and get a score. When I tried to sign back in, it told me my access was banned, and I was like, "What?" And but that was a few days ago. Twan said they fixed certain things, so you might be able to play. Yes, shit wouldn't record my score. I had this a couple days ago. I scored, it recorded it, and then I tried playing a game again, signed into my wallet, and it's like wrong username. I think they're just getting spammed because they're giving away $100,000 of this token. But yeah, it goes on until September 30th. There's another one on Wall Chain called Genome, and Genome did it was called V Formation, $25,000 for a Flappy Bird clone version leaderboard of their game. So of course bots probably got in, but you could have earned a little bit of money if you play Flappy Bird. I threw that at my kid. I don't think he played it either. Let me see if I can find the V formation thing before we jump. Yeah, I play a little bit of these games, but I've just been too busy doing so many other like InfoFi things. Where is it? V formation.
Here's the link to my business lawyer. He's big on social media, has YouTube channels where he shares a lot of the base concepts of how you can structure your LLCs, move money, because he's let me just put it this way. He is he's straight up sprint all the time. Dude is both a bar certified lawyer and an accountant. So his legal firm mixes your legal and your tax structure all into one.
Oh, did we lose Ditchy or is it just me?
You can't hear me?
Oh, there you came back.
Okay. I was just saying, I posted up a link here to Mark Kohler. He's my lawyer for my business activities. Uh, he's all over social media, has YouTube channels and the like. And he's in crypto, has been for a while. And he'll take payment in crypto, believe it or not. But he's, he's, you want to talk about hustle culture. This dude is a bar certified lawyer and holds a CPA license. So when you get advice on structuring your business, it's legal and accounting all in one package.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I just opened the thing. I'll give it a read, but I'm reading what Flame wrote. Similar to the airdrops, like the cat airdrop we indexed, could share more information with each other. I haven't heard any mentions of Pepe, Trump, AI tokens, AVAX token, yield farming plus staking, and tokens that did 100x in a year. Just like we could have shared info on marketing companies and TikTok videos and bots and let's players that could boost our games. I don't think ghost investors and big voters could be great as tweeters and marketers. I think, however, they should be informed about how to advertise their land parcel NFTs and focus more on what options they have for marketing the projects they invested in. So yeah, marketing's always like a big issue.
Yeah, and how much that's a whole different conversation about the DAO getting involved with its own marketing activities
I think it should do it like
independently.
honestly, InfoFi, like I've thought about it because it'd be like Goobs can attest because he's actually like handled a InfoFi campaign. If you have the budget, you have someone that can manage it, you can gain a lot of mind share. The thing is, the most crucial thing for this is you need someone to like manage and curate it in the sense of like to be the lead that is on social media rallying the troops. So there's a project called Billions that's on Polygon. Their lead is named Habe. He's killing it. His like account grew so much, but he's been like it's like Big Nil for Polygon. He's out there on the front being like their lead and like charging up the group the troops via like content and a stream of like information for these info5 peeps to like magnify. But also if you have on-chain experiences, which most of them are leaning towards, specifically gaming works really well for this, then you just need someone to rally those troops. So I would love to see the DAO budget in like I have to talk to Immaterial, but I do plan on using InfoFi for the Gotchi Battler campaign because we will get a bunch of new players that are going to try the free to play and some of them will convert. I've seen it already happen with other games, like people that just watch these streams where I'm talking about this stuff that have bought gotchis because they were interested in gotchi guardians. So it's going to be, I think it's very effective, and the DAO putting a little money into marketing can work. You just need somebody to kind of take the lead and do different things. TikTok, all those web 2 marketing campaign stuff work well. It's just very expensive and then the conversions might not be as attractive because web 2 spend is way less than what web 3 spend can be, which is the whole edge of InfoFi type thing. So I don't
Well,
know. The
there's a
breadcrumb
whole
campaign seemed very interesting. They closed out. They didn't really talk about it a lot today, but it was pretty successful for them. So I would love to see the DAO support some of the stuff like rarity farming, any like gaming tournaments that we do that we fund, or just our general activities in any ways. It would be really cool.
I am in agreement on that, but there is a missing piece to the entire component when we're talking about marketing, and that is Web 2 marketing is obsolete when we're talking about Web 3, meaning like having sales funnels is at this point is nothing more than a framework of discussion for how you build marketing in Web3. It's almost like we've come full circle. In Web3, you need to cultivate individual relationships with your users because mercenary capital is so easy to move around. The opportunity cost is non-existent. So we can have a front end funnel that brings people into our activities, but then we need to have relationship building to cultivate that relationship and keep them engaged and active in the protocol. And um, that, I mean, that's almost like let's bring back the guilds. That's what they were designed to do, was to cultivate those relationships and keep people engaged. but there's some missing pieces in our overall ecosystem. So I'd say we attack it like full stack development on the software side. We need to have a front end, we need to have the middle, and to have the back end social network that can support and cultivate those relationships.
Yeah, I agree. I do like some Web 2 marketing though, because like they're like, especially with like the Gotchi Guardians approach, it is somewhat Web 2 because it's IP based, but like, it's a spectrum like everything else. So we've actually gone past 2 hours. We haven't done that in a while. I don't want to make this recording too long for the YouTube. So I think we can bring this to the forums. Maybe I'll start a post in conjunction with Flame, and we can kind of like do a little bit of brainstorming and see if there's any interest from the DAO to put together some campaigns. InfoFi slash, like some of the Reddit stuff that he's discussed in the past, I think is smart. We can take a deeper dive, but I want to thank everybody for coming out. If you have any questions or comments, drop them into the DAO call agenda so that we can see them and bring them up next week. If you haven't already, make sure that you are moving your ghost out of staking on Polygon. I'm saying this because I need to do this and I have to remember to do this right now. And yeah, have a good day. Take it easy, Ditchy.
All right, you too, no future.
Peace out, people.